Day, and that means I get a chance to talk to Sean Salisbury. Also coming up on the show today, Ryan in Sacktown. Yes, indeed. We got all of that here on this Monday. And don't forget, coming up tonight, a special show at 7 p.m. Pacific, the King season in review. That's coming up tonight at 7 o'clock. Sean, we got a lot of different ways we can start. It's good to see you, buddy. But in sports, there are a handful, and I really mean a handful of athletes that you can look over and examine everything. But in the biggest of games, they always seem to be the biggest. And that's Steph Curry again. What he did yesterday is just freaking remarkable. Why should we be surprised, Sean?
We shouldn't. This is a commonplace for him, Grant, and we've discussed many times. You know, there's people with talent, there's people with skill levels, there's people who elevate, and then there's rarefied air. Mm-hmm. People who elevate under duress when somebody else isn't playing well or three or four guys aren't. Clay wasn't shooting well early. Steph took care of his business and realized that in elimination games, you have to – it's like in single elimination in football for Brady's of the world or Montana's, and in baseball for certain pitchers who have done it so well over the course of their career. They just, and I don't believe you can teach it, Grant. I think that hard work and practice puts, you know, what do they say? It's when preparation is when opportunities, when preparation, let me get this right. Preparation meets opportunity when they come together is when you, I don't even know the word I'm looking for. So I'm trying to give you a saying and I fucking can't even remember the saying. But that's neither here nor there. I'm a little swamped after the weekend too, but I know you're tired as well. But bottom line is when the best of the best of the best take it to another level, which us mere mortals don't do on a regular basis, they expect to play great. They're prepared for those moments because they visualized them. They've put themselves under duress on the practice court, on the practice field, as close to simulation as you can. And then all of a sudden, when everybody else's temperature is going up, their blood pressure goes down. That's Steph Curry. He was fantastic. And while I know he's the MVP of that series, I'm telling you right now, I can make a case for Looney as well.
Oh, boy.
3 games, over 20 rebounds, getting on the glass, second chance points.
Yep.
And they went from a game that was within 3 to 5 heading into the fourth quarter, and they boat raced them in the fourth quarter.
That's right.
Phenomenal performance by Steph, and it did what Golden State knows how to win in moments. Yeah. And games are about moments, and Steph Curry seized them all on Sunday.
All right. We're going to talk to Ryan in Sacktown a lot more about this series, but I want to get your take. So I want to switch over to the NFL draft. You're in Houston. They were very aggressive. I know everyone's excited, and I get that, okay, because they definitely got needs. But until you see C.J. Stroud and everyone else, we go through this every single year, Sean, right? We talk, you and I and you and everyone else, and you do shows all over America. I know you do. You're in every market in America during football season. And every year, you know, you're in a market, whether it's Cleveland or whether it's in San Francisco talking about Lance or wherever, where they know they made a mistake on draft day after looking at their quarterback play for a while. So, yeah, it looks good on paper, but as they say, let me know in 3 years.
Yeah, and there's no question. And, Grant, all you can do is judge what you saw on the college level and going through interviews and said, well, what best fits what we're trying to do? And right now, Bobby Slowick, D'Amico Ryans, Nick Caserio feel C.J. Stroud. And in truth, Grant, with this aggressiveness, sometimes you got to give up maybe a little bit more than you want to go from 12 to 3. The second pick wasn't my concern. I think we all thought they needed a quarterback. The question is, did they like one or love one? And apparently they loved C.J. Stroud the whole time, which is a great thing for the Texans. But then they needed to get the best defensive player. You can argue that 2 of the 3 best players in college football over the last 2 years, both of them are on the Texans. So when people say, well, why would you give up that asset? Well, I'm not worried about 2 or 3 years down the road. Will Anderson would be a top 5 pick. Next year, he'd be a top 5 pick the year after. And if it pans out, great. If it doesn't, you do it again. But you're right. We'll judge these guys down the road. But from what I saw the last 2 years of college football, these 2 dudes here in Houston, this was an aggressive, great approach to a franchise that's been anything but that over the last handful of years. much needed. Dominant quarterback, dominant edge rusher and game disruptor, and some sneaky players elsewhere that fit needs for them. I thought I would have done the same. And I grant this is not a pat on the back, but for days and days and days on end, I said, keep an eye on the 12th pick. If they can get up to Arizona, give me a quarterback and Will Anderson, depending on what it was. And I think we talked about on this show, I was begging for that. And I'm not saying that they were listening to me, but it felt like you had the assets and the ammunition to go get those guys.
Yeah.
And you did. And here you are. Now we'll judge them by their performance, but both are going to start. And I'm telling you right now, the Texans are the second best team in the division on paper right now. That's ahead of Indianapolis and ahead of Tennessee.
That's saying a lot, Sean. That's saying a lot.
I'm telling you, from the offseason, the coach, for me, the rosters of the roster of the Texans is every bit as good as Tennessee's and every bit as good as Indianapolis. And they're both going to be more than likely at some point playing rookie quarterbacks with less in-game experience than the dude that you're watching from Will Levis and Anthony Richardson, than C.J. Stroud in college. So advantage Texans. And Jacksonville's clearly the best team in this division. Now you got to go play. Right.
Sean, can you help the fans out that see the reports about how C.J. Stroud on the test that they give all these quarterbacks bombed out so much, what that's all about, and does it mean anything?
Yeah, for some it does, Grant. It depends on – listen, I'm not worried about if you know how to adjust a right angle and understand that type of math and geometry in a test going into before the draft. Some of these guys don't pay attention to it. I'm talking about players. When it was the Wonderlic. The C2 test is a test that's devoted to basically how you process information, all those things that go with the mental side of quick thinking and problem solving and however they got it structured. But that's the basic thing that they're doing. And some, as Bryce Young they call him a football savant. And although C.J. Stroud didn't score well, the Texans, watching his performance and sitting down and talking to him, figured they had enough to say, listen, some guys either don't take this test serious or not concerned about it. But when it comes to seeing people move on the field and operate in offense, to them, they saw enough to say he's going to be a hell of a football player, and we love him, or you wouldn't have taken him second. So cognitive function stuff, Grant, that you need at that position, that getting through stuff quickly. For some, it will bother them, and they would have stayed away at 2. For the Texans, they found enough. And he played against some pretty good competition in the Big Ten and in the national title playoff run. So I'm going to say that some may not test well cognitively, but can still go be a good football player, and the Texans feel the same way. I care about those things, but I also care about the other stuff. I want to go face-to-face, talk to his coaches that have coached him in the past. What kind of football IQ and processing is this guy about? The Texans found out enough, and they're good to go, because it's a complex offense what the 49ers do, bringing Bobby Slowick from them, the passing game coordinator, to be your O coordinator.
Yes.
So you obviously have to process it quickly, and they believe he can. And that's a good thing.
All right. I know you're in Houston, but I also know you cover the whole league, and you're on, top, and I know this is a big deal to you. Are there any other moves and or teams that really jumped out at you from the draft weekend?
I thought Baltimore sewing up Jackson and going and getting him some help. Another playmaker was important.
That was big. Yep.
I'm huge on that, because now you do not have to go into games if you're Lamar thinking, if I don't make every play, we cannot win. That's one. I thought that the Philadelphia Eagles getting the 2 players from Georgia, that's 4 draft picks and 3 first-rounders, and I think a third or fourth in Nakobe Dean, third-rounder, I think, from Georgia. They're loading up with those type of players. They're replacing both coordinators, so they've had to elevate. And then for them to get into the running back fold and make a trade in Detroit and to enhance their game when they didn't get a chance to get to Bijan Robinson. I loved Atlanta's choice of him. I think he's as good a playmaker that's not a quarterback as we have offensively in this draft.
Really?
We saw one of I'm telling you, as an offensive playmaker that's not a quarterback, I'm not sure Bijan Robinson is not the best of them all. Now he'll touch the ball more, Grant, because he is a running back. And I'm not a top 10 running back guy. I was in this draft, and I think Atlanta got him because I didn't think he was falling out of the top 10. I told you that.
Yeah, you did.
And in the NFC, what's that? Yeah, I'm sold on him because I saw him a bunch at UT this year, and Sark will have him pro ready. And I saw one about Jalen Hyatt. I love that pick of Hyatt to the Giants to give Brian Dable, the wide receiver for Tennessee, that's a home run hitter. And I think Detroit stole Hendon Hooker. I do. What a great, when they were going through it, I'm thinking, man, Detroit Goff had a good season. We know they can score. And I'm really, really impressed with the fact they went and got a guy who's a veteran, who can play, who's there, and you didn't have to spend a first-round pick on him. And I think that'll be good. And I said the Lions giving up on Swift, I wouldn't have given up on him, but I sure as hell would have drafted Bijan Robinson if I was Atlanta, and I didn't think he'd get by number 10, and they did. So I think Philadelphia had a great draft. I think Seattle was, again, outstanding. They didn't waste that 5th pick on a quarterback with what Geno did. They went and got another wide receiver and another play. I think it was a corner in that same first round, which Pete Carroll loves. I'm telling you, they did some things, and those were A's for me because I include what Lamar did for Baltimore, getting him signed. It was a hell of a draft, and one of the weirdest ones too, with all the crazy movement. And I don't know if I don't think it's a great draft, Grant, but I think there's some deep positions like corner. And how about Pittsburgh getting where Joey went to school, Joey Porter, and later on, which people thought he was a top 15 to 20 pick, and they get him in later rounds. And Mike Tomlin, I assure you, will maximize Joey Porter Jr.'s ability.
Give me a quarterback in this draft that you think 3 years from now we'll be saying, boy, that's very disappointing, or it didn't work out. And give me a quarterback in this draft that you think, I'm not saying they're going to be like a Brock Purdy in what we saw, but somebody that you think is going to be in this league for a significant period of time who's not Bryce Young or CJ Stroud.
I think Hendon Hooker is going to start in this league,
Wow.
Grant, and be a really good player. I do. He's accurate. I talked to Mike Martz about him, and Mike's a quarterback. Mike loves it. I talked to Mike this morning, and I said, aside from those two, just like you asked me, I said, who's the guy? And he said, Hendon Hooker. He said, Sean, he's accurate. He gets through his reads, which Mike is huge on. And I never met a coach harder on a quarterback in practice than Mike. And I gave him a hard time about, listen, you talk to Bulger, Trent Green, and Kurt Warner and say, what was it like? They said the games were a relief. I talked to all three of them about it. Mike was laughing today. I said, Mike, I know how bad you beat him down, but Mike put him in situations that Sunday became easier for them, right? Made them process. He said, he goes, Sean, I was brutal and hard on them in training camps to get the most out of them. Because if you can't handle Mike Martz, how are you going to handle $1:47 to go? Well, lo and behold, you saw what Mike, and you got to get a touchdown. So Mike did that. But I think Hendon Hooker is going to be a really good player. I do, Grant. I know he's a little bit older. And I'm going to give you I'm anxious to see how Jake Haener turns out. I think he did some great things at Fresno State. But I'm going to tell you to keep an eye on, and I know this may be hyperbolic. He wins. We don't know how long Stafford's going to play. They get him in the 4th round. The Rams, listen, and he's with a head coach that knows how to dial stuff up. If Stafford misses a game or two, I'm anxious to see how quick, because he's older too, Grant, is Stetson Bennett. He's one of those guys that reminds me of, you leave your glove on the mound and he comes out and picks it up and you don't get the job back. Now, he's just a grinder and he's been through all that adversity. So he's not going to beat out Stafford. How long's Matt going to do it? He's been banged up. We know he was banged up at the end of last year. He's there. They only got 2 quarterbacks, I think, on scholarship basically with the Rams right now. It's Stafford and Stetson Bennett. Keep an eye on that and how that starts to pan out. So I like those guys. And, there'll be some other positions that have sneaky guys, but a quarterback, Hendon Hooker would stand at the top of it. Now, the one that may not, I'm anxious to see how close they coach Anthony Richardson into his ability, because I really am. The guy's a freak. He's fun to watch, throw the ball and do all the things.
Yes, he is.
I mean, he's a blast, and I hope he reaches his ceiling or busts through it, and there isn't one. But accuracy, is he going to be Josh Allen, where we didn't know if he was accurate or didn't think accurate? We didn't think he was, and he came and is really accurate now. Or is he going to be a guy who Jamarcus Russell, or one of those guys that wasn't accurate, or a quarterback like Sam Darnold, who threw the ball to the other team too often and really has not got to the point where we got to see what he's about. I'm anxious to see if Richardson, because he's going to get every chance he can to do that, and he's got a good running back in the backfield there. I'm curious to see how this big fella pans out, how his accuracy is, and also how Will Levis protects the football, which he did not do in college very well last year.
What do you think about this from Cody? Cody's very active on all the programming that I do. And by the way, Cody, thank you very much for coming to all the watch parties. Your thoughts on this about this message?
Let's see. And Cortland Sutton, KJ Hamler Payton isn't afraid to make cuts. Oh, Sean, listen, and here's the crazy thing is Cortland Sutton, when he came out of SMU, was held in such high regard. and by picking up Judy's option, put it this way. He's going to have to elevate his play because Grant, we're at what contract time almost, aren't
That's
we?
right.
Getting close to Cortland Sutton's
That's
deal.
right.
So
Yep.
he's going to have to, and Sean Payton will have very little patience with nonsense. And Russ Wilson, depending on who he is under Sean Payton's offense, they put it this way: Sean Payton will find receivers that stay on the field and make a contribution regardless of their price. You saw what he did with Michael Thomas, and we've seen him elevate other players. I'm curious. That's one of the biggest intrigues in the year for me is can Cortland, they're exactly right, can Sutton stay on the field? And can Sean Payton get the most out of this? They're one of my 3 or 4 most intriguing teams. After last year, Grant, that defense is way too talented to be floundering.
No question.
Have the
Absolutely.
offense put him in those positions.
No doubt.
So of the 3 or 4 offenses you're going to want to watch this year, you're going to want to see that for a lot of different reasons.
I'm curious, and I know that I'm not going to compare the cities of Houston and Sacramento, but I just was in Sacramento for 3 weeks, and when the Kings are good, there's really nothing like it. And again, that they're a one-man band. I mean,
Yep.
it's absolutely amazing. I've talked to you a lot about what it's like being in Houston over the last several years with the success of the Astros. And you tell me on your show, Talk Radio, it's 12 months out of the year. What would it be like in Houston if the Texans became a perennial playoff team and a possible Super Bowl contender?
With a quarterback they love and a guy like that, star power, Grant, that they thought they had with Watson. And they did have with Watson, but unfortunately it went awry on and off the field and him not wanting to be there. It would be huge, Grant, because, listen, I try to tell – well, it is a football state and a baseball town here in Houston because they went through like 3 straight years where it was 100 losses and 60 wins. And Jim Crane – yeah, it was, and nobody was at the ballpark. Well, you're seeing in Oakland part of the time right now, right?
It was
God bless my buddy Billy Bean. I hope it gets fixed when they go to Vegas. But they had, and Jim Crane stayed the course, got the right manager, had the right front office, and they built a minor league system. And now they are the talk of the town no matter what. But I'm telling you, Grant, for the first time since Watson was drafted for a little bit of time, but between the coach who people like, he's not abrasive in D'Amico Ryan, the front office, and now the aggressiveness and getting players that can impact you. This is as much enthusiasm I've seen in the 10 years I've been in Houston. I'll tell you this.
Wow.
If I'm honest, Watson was the one guy, that they're now you've added 2 studs on offense and defense that people are pumped up about and Pierce they love. And there's a lot of things to love about what's going on. Now they got to go perform. But if they were to go and make the playoffs and be good and get deep into the playoffs, the Astros will still be loved because, it's kind of the first when you're the first, you're the original that people fall in love with. But it will go back to being a football town because, well, it's Texas. And if you try to throw a party or a wedding on a Friday night, you're a dumbass because they'll be going to football, high school football. So they're craving it just like they did the Astros.
Right.
But I can tell you this, as long as the Astros have this core and they keep winning, they will still be the show in town, but NRG will be filled up. And they will be season ticket sales are going to go up like crazy because of these 2 guys they drafted with pick 2 and 3 and the head coach and D'Amico Ryans.
All right. You're a big Raiders fan. For those that don't know on the stream, that's Sean's team. So what do you think about the Raiders' number 1 pick in the draft?
Yeah, why am I losing my mind? They took
I'm losing my mind.
The edge rusher from didn't they take the edge rusher from Texas Tech?
Yeah, I'm losing my mind too. MJ, we're both like
I talked about 8,000 of them. I think it's the Texas Tech edge rusher.
This is what happens when you get MJ. Just so you know, this is what happens when you age. You can't.
Or when you just are so talked sports out, but you still love it and want to do it. And I had like 8,000 names in my head. I don't even remember. I'm pretty sure it was the edge rusher, the kid from Texas Tech. I think it was, right?
It was Tyree Wilson.
Yeah, which I talked. Listen, he was. I think Grant had they have gone away from Will Anderson and not made that trade, and somebody would have. If let's say Arizona drafted Will Anderson, I think they would have tried to position themselves to get Tyree Wilson. I do. They loved him. He's had some lower leg injuries, but he is a fierce pass rusher and maybe even a better pure pass rusher than Will Anderson. But Anderson's a better all-around player. So I love this pick by the Raiders. We've waited for them to get somebody to say, okay, now we need to go disrupt the quarterback, get some help on defense, and now that you got a quarterback that can protect the football, I love the pick. And I actually, he could have gone a couple picks higher because people crave that. And I know the Texans liked him, but they fell a little bit more in love with Will Anderson. This is a good pick and a pick that, as a diehard Raider fan, He will be. He's before he even got off the private plane to sign
Yeah.
it to show up and say hi to everybody. He was starting at and think about this. They got him and Max Crosby.
Max
Right?
Crosby's as good as they come. Yep.
That's what I'm saying. So you're now
Yep.
building what great teams are doing now. You can't double them both the entire game. And this kid's got that kind of pass rushing skill. Now he just needs to elevate and get a chance to do it against NFL left tackles, which is a tough job, either left or right tackle. They'll move him around, and he's a flexible guy. It's a good get by the Raiders. I loved it.
Final thing, I just wanted to let you know, a couple of weeks ago, you were talking to me about finding dogs that were abandoned in a garage and basically were left for dead. And we always talk about the impact that when you don't know it. So I had a lady from a shelter in the greater Sacramento area reach out to me. She is an animal activist, and she works primarily with dogs in shelters. Anyway, make a long story short, my podcast tomorrow is going to be centered on exactly what you experienced. And I know it's not sports related, but I think it's important because these stories, Sean, here's what I learned from listening to you. And then after talking with the guests that are going to be on my podcast tomorrow, this isn't just like a once in a while thing. This happens all the time. And I didn't realize, I mean, they were talking about this is a real problem in our society. So I want to thank you.
It's brutal. Thank you, Grant. I know people like to get new puppies and stuff, but man, there's so many out there that need love and care. Grant, I don't even know if I've talked to you about this. The 3 dogs that I went to and we saved and put them with somebody else. Do you realize just under 2 weeks ago, I don't think I told you this, a black lab, people had a rope and a chain both around it that was choking this dog so bad that they left it alone, that there's 4 all the way circular around the dog's neck. The hair has been rubbed off to the point where it's raw. Well, we went and it ran away, and somebody posted they couldn't take the dog. We went and picked it up, got all its shots and did it all, and not just fostered it. It's now Opus One, named after that great wine because she's a survivor. She now lives with us, so we added a 3rd dog, and I got no room in my bed. They're out of their damn mind, but I love them, and that's not a pat on the back. It's just that I know people say, foster. When I bring them into my house, I'm like, after like 27 minutes, I'm like, okay, I'm not giving this dog to anybody. I'm keeping it. So we just rescued another one, and this dog is such a sweetheart, and my big American bully loves it. So we got 3 of them, and we got small, medium, and large. And it's kind of funny to watch, but we added it. Grant, I'll be coming and staying with you soon because I'm about out of my own hole, brother. But that's a great thing you're doing. Sports, we get all day, every day to talk about it. We don't talk about it enough. So I'm grateful I had another dog to the fray, but more importantly, that I can't wait to hear that podcast, what you're doing tomorrow, because
thank you, buddy.
These animals and these dogs need it. The abuse is sick. It's a sick, special place in hell for people who have. I'm a big believer in helping people who can't help themselves, and those dogs can't help themselves.
Sean, you're the best. You enjoy your week, buddy, and I look forward to chatting with you next Monday.
Love you, brother. Good luck on that podcast tomorrow, man. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Again, folks, there are people that, talk and talk and talk, and there are people that, put their talking into actions, right? Actions speak louder than words. That man right there, his actions speak louder than words. Hey, I want to talk to you about New Works Plumbing of Sacramento. Locally owned for over 20 years, New Works has a fix for you. Just go to sacserviceplumbing.com or call the number on your screen. New Works Plumbing, they've got a fix for you. Ryan in Sacktown, the day after, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, that was painful to watch in the 4th quarter yesterday, but this season wasn't painful. The season invigorated Kings fans. The season gave Kings fans hope. It was a marvelous campaign, and you and I, we're going to have a lot of fun tonight reviewing everything and talking about the future tonight at 7 o'clock. By the way, I watched all of your programming yesterday. You did a great job. I watched you with Connor in the pregame, and then with Jerry coming on. So great job. It was outstanding. I was on the plane most of the day dealing with crap, but I was watching it, and you did a hell of a job.
Thank you, Napes. I really appreciate it. I've learned from the best. Let's put it that way.
I don't know about that, but it was
and
great.
It's pretty easy with all the viewers too and all the comments. We have a lot of fun. But I'm looking forward to tonight, and really debriefing and talking about what a great season it was. I mean, yesterday, sure. I mean, it's a sour taste to end on, but there's much more positive that outweigh the negative this year.
Yeah, there was a couple of things, and I did a rant on this today. And you and I think, and you don't have to be a brain surgeon to talk about this, because I got a lot of things wrong in this past series. I had the Warriors in 6. You actually had the Warriors in 7.
Mhm.
I just thought the Warriors were significantly better than the Kings, but they're not. They're this much better. They're a Steph Curry better, and Kevon Looney was outstanding in this series. I said the Kings to me showed me in this playoff series they were better than I thought, and the Warriors not quite as good. But, and I talked about this before game one, and I think most people would agree, but I emphasize this. I said the Kings do not want a scenario where they have Steph Curry in their building in a game 7 in a winner take all. And that's really what yesterday came down to. As great as Looney was, and again, I'm not discarding, but what Steph Curry did yesterday is what great athletes do, generational type players. And that's what we saw yesterday.
Yeah, we saw bona fide greatness, probably one of the top performances of Steph's career.
Yep.
And I agree with you because we saw the best of the Warriors. I think that's the best the Warriors have. And on many nights during this series, the Kings didn't show their best. Last night, game 7, the Warrior starters, a plus 130. The Kings starters, negative 99. That summarizes it right there for you.
Who are you most disappointed with?
I'm most disappointed with Mike Brown. I felt like the coaching yesterday was just a little bit off. The method in game 6 was throw the kitchen sink at him, throw it against the wall, see what sticks, and they got it done. And just yesterday, it felt a step slow. Wasn't sure about some of the coaching decisions, specifically Davion only 8 minutes, Terrence Davis 26. And Curry is a great player. He's going to get his no matter what, but certainly I think Davion could have maybe bundled that up or stopped it a little bit better than the Kings did. But overall, I can't say I'm super disappointed in Mike Brown or the Kings in general, because again, it was a great season. It's just how they lost yesterday that disappoints me.
First of all, Sabonis was average in this series for the most part. Kevon Looney and the Warriors did a marvelous job. That is an issue. Kevin Huerter, with the exception of a couple of big shots in game 6, he was still 3 of 11 in that game, by the way, was for all intents and purposes invisible in this series. And then as a starter, Harrison Barnes was way too inconsistent in this series. And we'll talk about him coming up in depth tonight at 7 o'clock, because we don't know if he's going to be on the team next year with his contract. But it's really hard, Ryan, to beat a team like the Warriors in a game 7 when, as you said, and I'm not even going to include Fox in this. What Fox did in this series to me is amazing. Guys playing with a fractured fingertip. So I'm not even talking about him. We don't need to talk about him. He's elevated himself all the way through the roof that's above my head. But those other players, I'm sorry, you needed more from them.
You absolutely did, Grant. And unfortunately, it wasn't out of character. Almost every time we did a halftime show, one of those 3 players you mentioned would be scoreless or only had a bucket here. And none of them really stepped their game up. Oop, lost the camera there. None of them really stepped their game up offensively, which was wildly disappointing in the playoffs. And it's just we didn't have a cohesive unit that clicked together at any time on offense during those 7 games. It wasn't the Kings offense that they normally run, and they're based off emotion, sharing the ball, and it was stagnant pretty much for the 7-game series.
By the way, when my camera goes off, people applaud and they're like, "Oh, thank God we don't have to look at him." But I could just go like this, and you could just look at the beautiful Miami. You could look at beautiful Biscayne Bay in Miami, and people are like, "Grant, get the hell off the screen. Let me just see the beautiful view," But seriously, you're right about that. And we're going to have a lot of fun talking about this tonight, coming up at 7 o'clock. And again, I tried to be as active as I could without being a pain in the ass yesterday with my messages.
Yeah,
I got to tell you something that bothered me a little bit. And listen, you know me, I got roasted when you and I were at 34 Mexican Cantina on the Game 6 show on Friday, because I didn't think the Kings were going to be in the game. I thought they were going to get blown out. And I don't mind being wrong. I'm wrong. That's part of life. You're going to be wrong when you make predictions.
Yeah.
Okay. But I got to tell you, Ryan, in looking at all of the messages, and there were hundreds of them during your show last night or after the game yesterday afternoon, I was really bothered by the negativity attached to those messages, because I'm looking at the big picture. The big picture is, and I don't even think this is debatable, this was a phenomenal season for this franchise. Okay. The big picture. This was a unbelievable playoff series. Yeah, game 3 was a stinker and the fourth quarter last night. But that doesn't take away from what this team accomplished this year. And De'Aaron talked about it after the game, that this is the experience you have to go through. Even Draymond Green talked that way about Fox, and he said, hey, he's lost a game 7, and he said, you have to go through this to get over the hump and to make it better. I don't see how you could give this franchise anything less to an A or an A+ on the totality of the season. And I got to tell you, I understand the emotion of being a fan. I get that. But the negativity yesterday with the chats I was a little taken back by that. I was a little surprised.
Yeah, I think it's just, Kings fans, we've seen it, Grant. It's either love or hate, regardless of when this team's having a wonderful season, and it's bled into today. I mean, it was no surprise to me, honestly. But, I can't wait for Barnes to get out of town now. And you think about how clutch at times during the season he has been for the team and kind of the consummate professional. But, I think if you would ask those people outside of that moment that their team just lost by 20 in game 7, third game 7 that they've lost now in Sacramento history or franchise history, they would probably rethink some of that and enjoy and look back at how great this season was.
Yeah, I am going to be on with Larry Krueger on Wednesday at 9 a.m. Pacific. So we're going to redo the whole series just like Ryan and I are doing, but I want to get his perspective. That is coming on Wednesday at 9 in the morning. So don't forget, tonight at 7 o'clock, all right, in a couple of hours, Ryan and I are going to be doing our Kings season ender. And I'm going to say this, and I know I speak for you too. I'm really blown away by the response that we had doing these shows, and we'll do it again next season for sure. It was phenomenal. The feedback and the audience participation and the numbers. And so I know I speak for Ryan. Thank you very much. You people are amazing.
Yes, absolutely. And there was a lot of thank yous yesterday on the show. I mean, there is no show without you guys. It started as Grant, you're going to do it once every
That's right.
couple weeks.
Once or twice a week on games. And then we're like, oh, wait, there's a demand for this. And then let's add at halftime. And then Ryan said to me, he goes, Napes, what do you think about doing a pregame? And I'm like, I'll tell you what, Ryan, you're making good strides. I'm going to let you have that baby and let's see how you do. And guess what? That was phenomenal for you. And you went from here to here to here, and you were able to, on a game 7, host the show yesterday. So I was very happy to see you get that opportunity, and it caught on. And so, yeah, it was great. I'm not promising you that I'm going to be joining you on pregame shows next year, but that's your baby. So if you want to do it, it's all there for you.
Sounds good. Thank you, Napes. Looking forward to tonight.
Yeah, YouTube tonight and on Periscope as well, right here on this platform. So whatever you're watching us on right now, that will be on tonight at 7 o'clock. Okay, I didn't listen to the entire post-game press conference from everybody.
Yeah.
How is it that Davion Mitchell, okay, who's the only one on the Kings that can guard Curry to a degree where Curry knows he has someone on him? No disrespect to anybody else, but let's just call it the way it is.
Yeah.
He plays less than 9 minutes, 8 minutes and change, and that's not a point of conversation in the post-game press conference. Do you understand that?
No, I was completely blown away by it. I mean, I thought there was something wrong with me, that I was just not finding the right clip, but not a single person asked him. And it was almost like Davion was waiting to be asked that question. Somebody asked one that was kind of right around the bush, but nothing directly. And I don't know how it couldn't have been asked. It's just poor reporting. I'm sorry. There's no other way to put it.
I can tell you this. If that were in many other markets in America, that would have been the first question that was asked. That would have been the first question. And it would, if you were in Philadelphia, the coach would still be on the podium and they'd still be grilling him over that. It wouldn't just be, it's just, I don't understand that. And even with that said, I think the Kings lose anyway, but I don't understand how that's not a topic of debate.
Exactly. And I mean, I think what bothered me or surprised me was when Mike Brown was on the podium, 75% of the questions were about the greatness of Steph Curry. And so you're already having the conversation about Steph Curry. Okay, he was a subject of Who's going to guard him? How are we going to do it? The Kings did it effectively for a couple games this season, and the formula was there, and the formula wasn't used on Sunday. Why wasn't it? Just tell us.
Exactly. Unbelievable. All right.
Yep.
So I'm looking forward to talking more about this with this conversation tonight at 7 o'clock. I appreciate everything you did yesterday, and we'll look forward to being here at 7 p.m. All right. So
You're
have a good
welcome,
couple
Nibs.
hours. I'm going to get ready for my show on Listen App, and we'll be ready to rock and roll, my friend.
Sounds good, bud. See you then.
All right. Good stuff from Ryan. Also want to talk about Bennett's with a third location coming to you soon in Rockland, Roseville, and Sacramento. Don't forget, make your Mother's Day reservations. Don't wait. Mother's Day reservations now at Bennett's in Roseville and Sacramento. Go to Bennett'sRestaurants.com. That's Bennett'sRestaurants.com for all of your information. That's Bennett's. And again, they're coming to Rockland real soon. Thank you very much, everyone. Appreciate it. And I'll be back here in a couple hours with Ryan on If You Don't Like That. So long.